This is The KJ Show. The KJ Show with host Dr. Katherine Johnson is a mix of breaking news and practical advice on the many ways in which the energy industry can affect you and your family. Katherine will combine energy updates and conversations with leaders in the energy efficiency community. So please welcome your host, Dr. KJ.
Hello, and welcome to the KJ Show on my new channel, YouTube, the KJ Show with Dr. KJ. And I'm hoping you can find me anywhere. I'm going to be eventually expanding the distribution of this program to all the other platforms where all good podcasts live. But today I wanted to talk about something that's been near and dear to my heart for most of my 30-year career, Energy Star and the Energy Star program. And it's on the chopping block, which scares me. But before we get started, I really wanted to focus a little on my favorite parts, which are breaking news, as you cannot make this stuff up. So I am originally from Minnesota, so I'm always happy to hear about Minnesota utilities doing innovative things. And there is an innovative activity happening in a little tiny town in Minnesota called Slayton. It has about 2,000 residents, which is slightly smaller than my hometown of Granite Falls. But basically they say that because they're such a little small town, Xcel Energy, their electric provider, basically neglects them and doesn't take care of them. And they have outages. And so 75% of the voters have approved to actually take their utility, become a city-owned utility, municipalize it, which is something I'm familiar with as well. And I'll talk about that later in the show. But so what happened was there were some really long wait times. In fact, there was an outage they had a 4-hour wait to shut off power when there was a utility pole that was burning, which is dangerous and also really scary that it would take 4 hours. And then another time, it said it's basically knocked out power for the entire town's west side. And there was another also incident. There were several incidents. It was sort of the catalyst to why these little town wants to go and do their own thing with electricity. You want to show the pictures. There was a tornado that hits, and they have a lot of tornadoes in Minnesota. I'm well aware. So what happened was they actually had, here, I'm just going to ask them to put up the pictures. There was a tornado that hit, and the fire department had caused, this is a little town, and this is where they want to put the electricity company. They want to basically make it part of their city, a city-owned utility, and they're going to have it run by the local co-op that's nearby, Noble's Cooperative Electric. But what happened was when a tornado came in 2019, it knocked down a tree, and the fire department was there, but the Xcel Energy folks weren't there, and it burned for flickering and on fire for 9 hours before the fire finally burned out. So they had this fire raging in this little town for 9 hours. The firefighters were trying to, contain it, but the Xcel Energy experts, the linemen who are trained in how to deal with electrical fires, weren't even on site. So basically what happened is the little city got fed up, as I would have. If you want to go to the next slide too. So at a public hearing last year, they brought in a city council consultant who basically said that the outage rate for their little town of Slayton is twice the average for every other Minnesota town. And it's twice the state average. And the Xcel's response time, this is the Xcel Energy truck, their response time was twice as long for Slayton as any other other places. So they decided they're going to contract with Noble Electric, who has crews that are actually based in their town. What an idea, having a utility crew based in your town. What a good idea. So they had a public referendum, and they decided they wanted to do and make their city, make their utility, I can't say this, city-owned. That's a better way to say it. Now, this approach has been tried in other cities. Boulder tried it, failed. Minneapolis tried it and failed. But Slayton thinks they have a better idea of what to do. And frankly, the city I live in now, Winter Park, Florida, we did it, and it was very successful, and I'll talk about that later in the show. But basically, they said, that they're really tired of waiting for the outages. They're tired of being ignored by these, Xcel Energy, who has bigger fish to fry, obviously. And I love this quote. It says, you have a squirrel outage, and it's a 2-hour deal because Xcel is coming from Mankato, and you're coming from Sioux Falls. We're coming from our shop 3 minutes down the road. I know where all those places are, as I know John does too. So it's interesting to see how it's going to turn out, and I am rooting for them. And if they want any advice, you can give me a call. I know a lot about this topic. The other thing is, another part of breaking news, you can't make this stuff up, is that New York State has finally realized, they've come to their senses, and the governor has said, you know what? We're not going to meet our renewable energy goals because we don't have enough transmission in place. Well, no kidding. And in fact, they were supposed to have 10 megawatts of power by 2040, but it was supposed to be renewables. They don't have it. They only have 7 megawatts. And in the meantime, they're trying to get rid of their fossil fuel plants too. But because they can't do that, because they don't have renewable energy projects in the pipeline. And it takes a really long time for these renewable energy projects to get approved and get hooked to the grid. And they're also expensive. So even though the regulatory landscape is, favors renewable energy development over traditional fossil fuels, it doesn't really help because there's all these gridlocks. And when a renewable energy project wants to connect, it can take to the New York System Independent System Operator, NISO, it has to take all these permissions and everything. So it can take multiple years and incur significant costs. So a lot of developers are saying it's a little too expensive. In fact, and the ironic thing is, the people that are going to pay the most are, of course, the people who can least afford it, the low-income customers, because the electric rates are higher now. So there was an expert that was called in to help, advise them. And this was the wonderful takeaway he had. We're setting ourselves up for failure because we didn't include the electric system when we wanted to transition. It's like we deal with it later. Well, later is here and we haven't dealt with it. Now, how can you make a plan to transition from one energy source to another without including the current system in place? That's like saying, well, we were going to transition from horses to cows, or from horses to cars, but we really didn't think about building roads, which is true, they didn't. Or we're going to transition from X to Y, but we really didn't think about how we were going to do that, which is exactly the entire failure of the renewable energy program worldwide. Nobody really thought about how can they integrate it into the existing infrastructure and how can they streamline it. And guess what? It's expensive. It's difficult. Takes time. And then you can't just shut down your fossil fuel plants if you have nothing to replace it. Maryland, where I used to live, and technically still do, they wanted to retire their nuclear power plants and electrify the state, but they can't do that because they don't have enough renewable energy resources in place. And the ones they had in place are wavering and probably aren't going to stay. Wind power probably isn't going to remain. So they're begging their nuclear power plants to stay open. Which is ironic given Maryland's, push for renewables and electrification, but they aren't really thinking it through, which has sort of been my whole mantra the entire time I've been doing this and most of my career. You have to really have a plan in place. No one was strategically thinking this through, and you got a bunch of folks who wanted to do the right thing and just can't. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson. You're watching the KJ Show with Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
And welcome back to the KJ Show on my new YouTube channel. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. And today I am being a little more activist than I usually am because I want to say there is a government program that we must absolutely save, Energy Star. Now, it has its pros and cons like everything else. But as someone who has been working in the energy industry for over 30 years and has evaluated hundreds of programs that incorporate Energy Star products, equipment, technology, tools into their program implementation and design, I can tell you conclusively, Energy Star works. And it's one of the only government programs that does work. I wish you could say that how that works well. I wish it worked as well. I wish Social Security worked as well. I wish the food stamp programs worked as well. So I'm a big fan of limited government, but occasionally the government gets it right. And Energy Star is one of the programs it gets right. It's a voluntary labeling program. Manufacturers, retailers, all these different product groups get together and they voluntarily decide that they're going to make their energy, their equipment, their appliances, their furnaces, their water heaters, not water heaters, but their equipment, their electric and gas using equipment more energy efficient, which of course is something that I believe in strongly. And not only that, it is one of the few programs that actually enjoys bipartisan support. So it's on the chopping block, though, despite its successes, because it's kind of on the Doge. It was in the Doge sites. And that doesn't make sense to me. It seems like they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. More than 1,000 companies and organizations have urged EPA to maintain full funding and staffing levels for the Energy Star programs. And I agree too. I actually know a lot of the folks who work for Energy Star directly, and they're very smart, very dedicated people. I've worked with them for years. And this is an interesting comment from both sides of the aisle. Eliminating the Energy Star program would directly contradict the administrative's promise to reduce household energy costs, said Paula Glover, president of nonprofit Alliance to Save Energy. For just $32 million a year, the Energy Star helps American families save over $40 billion in annual energy costs. That's a return of $350 for every federal dollar invested. I don't know of another program in a federal government that has that kind of rate of return. And as a businessman, you think Donald Trump would say, hey, listen, that's actually a program that works. But because Doge came in and they were ready, shoot, fire, they didn't really aim. They didn't really look at it and didn't understand it. And they made a lot of mistakes. And now Trump is sort of, backtracking. All the people that were cut from the weather service, the weathermen, they're coming back. I think Energy Star needs to stay off the chopping block. Senate Appropriations Chair Susan Collins, who is Republican Maine Republican, and she's sort of, always been a little less Republican than other Republicans, but she works in Maine. So what do you expect? She was baffled by Trump's administration to cut the program. She goes, I know my constituents like knowing what the energy usage of a particular appliance is, so they can factor that into their buying decisions, which is exactly the point. The program was started, has become the international standard for energy efficiency labeling. And they have similar programs in Canada and programs over in Europe to basically they call them different things, but frankly, the Energy Star logo is really well recognized by 90% of American households, which is higher brand recognition than a lot of things. And also the Energy Star program has enjoyed bipartisan approach, according to another expert in the area. It's almost universally supported by manufacturers, retailers, home builders, U.S. customers, and by the man who used to run the EPA's Office of Air and Radiation under Biden. Energy Star ratings of appliances have been part of millions of household purchase decisions, and it's true. And that's what they've spent. The government has spent millions of dollars doing this awareness campaign to create not only awareness of the Energy Star logo, but what it means. And what it means basically is that the equipment's going to be more energy, use less energy. It's going to actually save you money than, say, a conventional equipment. So when I go to your Home Depot and you want to go buy a new refrigerator or a new washer or dryer, you can see which one have Energy Star and which ones don't, and save money. The interesting thing is now the market has what we call transformed. So it's very, very difficult now to find an appliance that doesn't have an Energy Star logo, that isn't energy efficient, unless you're going in the secondhand used refrigerator market, which still exists. But the point is that Energy Star actually is a proven. Buyers know about it. We've spent a lot of money building awareness, and manufacturers are voluntarily signing up to make their equipment more affordable, more energy efficient. Basically, it says that manufacturers that meet those very strict standards, and I've been involved in some of these specification reviews, they basically say they have to pass a test. They have to be tested and certified that they actually are going to use less energy than a conventional counterpart. And Energy Star is most widely recognized symbol, and it's basically 90% of the American households recognize it, which is really high. And these are all good reasons. This is not why you should cut the program. I mean, you've done all this really good brand awareness, brand building. You've gotten a whole group of people working together to frankly accomplish something that I think every government, no matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, whatever your particular political beliefs are, saving energy is saving the planet, and saving energy is also just darn good business. That's one of the reasons a lot of people invest in energy efficient equipment when they go to remodel their homes or businesses, put in new appliances, because they know that over the life cycle of the equipment, the Energy Star approved appliance should last longer and save energy in the process. So it's kind of a win for everyone, which is one of the reasons I don't understand why our businessman who's president would actually think that this is a good idea. I'm guessing somebody will talk to him and hopefully smarten him up a bit. Maybe the Department of Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, who ran a utility company and probably participated in a lot of Energy Star programs, as most utilities do. I'm hoping Chris Wright will actually, sort of say, hey, that's not one of the things we need to cut. Not saying there's not a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in the federal government, but I can tell you right now, Energy Star is not one of them. The other thing that's really interesting is that basically energy is, in terms of energy efficiency, almost half of all American households purchased an Energy Star appliance in the last 5 years. So it's part of our system. It's part of our purchasing decision. We need to save it. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on my new show on YouTube, and I will be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to the KJ Show. I'm your host, Dr. Katherine Johnson, and today I'm talking about why we must save the Energy Star program. And it's because it actually works. And having evaluated hundreds of programs that use Energy Star, I can conclusively say I know that it does. I've seen it. I've worked with it. I believe me. This is one of the few areas I'm actually an expert in Energy Star. So the program has achieved significant impacts and environmental benefits since 1992, when it was started by George W. Bush, and it actually has really helped uh, include a variety of products and categories. These are just some of the categories that Energy Star manufacturers and retailers work with to basically reduce the energy use and improve the energy efficiency of all these different types of equipment, everything that's in your home or business, pretty much. Air source heat pumps, furnaces. It's a little tricky with water heaters, but they've been able to do it. Lighting, I mean, they're one of the reasons we got rid of those silly CFL bulbs. Office computers, equipment, Xerox machines. I mean, I actually did an audit once of New York State building, and found out that most of the Energy Star settings weren't used, and we got them to save the energy. And the city of Buffalo saved millions of dollars a year just by making sure their Energy Star computer settings were all operating. It's such an easy fix, and it doesn't really bother anyone. And so guess what? If you have to wait for your computer to wake up, that's probably good. And it's not going to take more than 3 seconds. So basically, the benefits of Energy Star are enormous. They've achieved billions of dollars in savings from its partners, actually $500 billion in energy costs since 92. $500 billion in energy savings for $32 million investment a year. I'll take it. Reduced energy consumption. They haven't actually ever, I don't think they've never really quantified everything. I mean, they're saying trillions of kilowatt hours of electricity. I'm sure if we were going to look at all of it, it would be in the trillions. I know it's been millions and millions of kWh savings for the programs that I've evaluated over the years. And best of all, lower utility bills, something we all should be mindful of and helpful. Greenhouse gas reductions. Now, at some points, Energy Star is a little preachy on its environmental stance, but they can actually clarify and document, because we're using less energy, we're creating less greenhouse gas emissions, which is good for the planet. Sometimes. Reduced air pollution, which is also very good for the planet, because they have now less SOx and NOx, those harmful particulates that are in the air that may or may not cause global warming, based on my show last week. But the more thing, there's been a lot more immediate impacts. It creates jobs for the manufacturers who make these products that people then buy. It has helped encourage Energy Star investments in new technologies and infrastructure. It also has huge public awareness and widespread participation. There are more than 840 utilities, state and local governments, and nonprofits that use Energy Star as a way to promote energy efficiency and savings. It's again, this is very near and dear to my heart, which is why I'm passionate. There's Energy Star awards they give every year, the Partner of the Year, the utilities and partners that have done the best job in coming up with programs to reduce energy usage and helping promote Energy Star. One of my clients actually won one of those awards. A couple of my clients have, and they're very proud of them. And they have a big fancy dinner every year in Department of Energy and in Washington, D.C. And it's really interesting to see all the ways these partners have been able to work together with retailers and manufacturers and builders and all kinds of folks across the entire spectrum. It's exactly what a well-run program should do. Also, the interesting thing is they basically say now they have product categories for 80,000 different products, models. And it's based on, rigorous criteria. 1,800 manufacturers and 1,200 retailers make up the Energy Star grouping that actually sells the products to our various and sundry customers. And then now, I love this figure, 2.7 million homes have nearly 2.7 million Energy Star single-family, multifamily, and manufactured new homes that have been built to date, including 190,000 in 2023. That's about 12% of all new homes built. And I know the guy who used to run the program that was actually promoting energy efficient home building. Really great guy. And he, it was just amazing the stuff that he could get builders to do, to actually put in. So instead of just putting up cheaply built houses that are leaky, and even though they're brand new, they don't really save energy, you put in the insulation at the beginning, you put in good windows, you put in good appliances, you actually have a much better energy efficient home that is actually going to be less to operate over the long run. And I mean, I talked my builder into putting in Energy Star appliances and all those things when we moved in. He was looking at me kind of funny. This was a long time ago. And I said, no. You understand, I have to put Energy Star stuff in. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble with my friends. And when I had an open house, all my friends who are in the business came over and were very proud of all the Energy Star appliances I had. I'm like, nobody else in my world goes and looks at my refrigerator and my furnace and my water heater and my microwave to see if it's Energy Star. It was. But there are 330,000 commercial properties too that use this tool that EPA developed called Portfolio Manager, which actually tracks and measures energy usage. So building owners can actually track and see how much energy they're saving. And they can also track their water use, their wastewater use, and other materials. And building consumption, reducing energy consumption in buildings is a huge priority in a lot of different government agencies around the country, as well as if you really want to make a dent in reducing energy consumption, you need to go where energy is used, which is primarily in commercial buildings. 48 local governments have used it, 7 states, 2 Canadian provinces, 3 Canadian cities also use this tool. And it's known to benchmark it, and it's been really helpful for benchmarking, so cities can compare themselves. Well, how are my buildings in my city doing compared to your buildings? And they have little contests, and it works really well. There's also 35 different industrial sectors. People don't necessarily know that Energy Star also gets into the industrial products, the commercial ovens and commercial manufacturing line, and bakers and pharmaceutical plants and steel mills and petroleum refineries all have Energy Star equipment installed in them. So it's it encompasses such a wide swath of our economy, and energy is a sixth of our economy. And so here we got a program that targets things that need to be targeted. It's voluntary, which is amazing, and it's successful. This is why we need to save Energy Star. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, and you're watching The KJ Show, and I'll be right back.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
And welcome back to the KJ Show. I'm your host, Dr. Katherine Johnson. And today I'm talking about why we need to save Energy Star. It's one of those few government programs that actually miraculously works and should not be on the chopping block. But during the segment, normally we'd like to have a call-in number, but because we haven't quite gotten that yet, I am going to respond to some of the comments John made. But I also like to talk about something else that's kind of silly to me. You want to put up the picture? So, King Charles. Not that one, this one. This is King Charles's castle, Sanhedrin home, one of his many palaces. And he's very eco-conscious. He's been talking about, environmental stuff since the 70s. And so he decided to put in a new solar farm in Norfolk, in his estate, that to actually power the estate and then sell some back to the national grid, the electric grid in England. The monarch started building a 2,000 panel facility on a former horse grazing paddock that was behind the residence. It's been connected up to the main house, and it supplies about 21 megawatts of power. It's 2.3 acre solar farm. And basically, they can use it when there's sunny weather, of course, not all the time. But it has an operational lifespan of 40 years. What our eco-conscious king does not realize is that those solar panels are not recyclable. So to me, it's sort of silly that he went and put in a solar farm, as eco-conscious as he is, not realizing how much damage it causes to the environment to both develop the solar panels and then get rid of them later. But why would he know that, right? Anyway, but then the other part that is really funny to me is, so they're going to use the solar farm for 40 years, and then they're going to turn it back to the horses. So what they did is they planted tall trees that prevent the solar panel from being hidden from view for its 50,000 annual visitors. Why on earth would you have tall trees blocking the solar panels and expecting the solar panels to be able to capture sunlight and generate power? This is one of the problems that certain states and certain organizations are having promoting solar, say in the Pacific Northwest, because there's a lot of tall trees and there's not a lot of sunlight in some of those places. But the tall trees in Oregon and Washington State make it difficult to install solar panels in certain buildings in certain areas. And it's sort of obvious that if you have tall trees, what do? They provide shade. What does a solar PV panel do? It generates electricity from the sun instead of, which we're hiding from the tree. So it doesn't make any sense to me. But it just sort of sounds, this is another, well-intended but misguided attempt to be eco-conscious at the end of really sort of self-defeating. So the panels are made from toughened glass and mounted on steel framework, and the king is determined to introduce as many renewable energy schemes in the royal land holding as possible. I think that's great. I actually, I'm glad that he thinks that he's doing something right. I just wish he had advisors who said, if you're going to put in a solar panel farm, you need to not have the trees block the sun. Seems a little obvious to me. And then I have some comments here in our chat that basically Energy Star is very effective and it works, and 32 million is a pittance for what the government, and that it should be pretty easy to show that 32 million is returned many times over every year in savings. And my husband Donald says he wouldn't buy an appliance that wasn't one Energy Star. True, but I wouldn't let him either. So the point is that I just really think that when getting back to King Charles for a minute, it's sad that he lives in a world so far removed from reality on so many levels. And I'm glad that he's showcasing solar PV, but he doesn't really understand that that's probably not the best economical or environmental solution. And there are other ways to generate electricity in a more responsible way. I mean, frankly, if you really wanted to be smart, he'd put in a geothermal heat pump system, which uses the sun and by heating and cooling the earth, and in exchange, it lasts 100 years, is very cost effective, very environmentally safe, and is a lot better investment and frankly cheaper than a 2,000 solar panel farm. And the other thing I don't quite get is, if he wants to showcase the fact that he is indeed energy conscious, then why is he hiding the solar panel PV farm? Probably because it's ugly and it sort of ruins the view of his beautiful Sandringham estate and its beautiful gardens and all those things. So again, it seems a tad bit hypocritical, doesn't it? That we have a king who wants to be environmentally conscious and eco-conscious, hiding his solar panel behind a bunch of trees. I just would love to be able to understand how much electricity he's actually able to generate. And I don't think it's going to be as much as he thought, because also the sun doesn't always shine in England. It's kind of be rainy sometimes. So there's a lot of problems in my mind about having these, kind of this almost greenwashing, where look how good I am. I'm installing solar panels on in one of my estates. Okay, great. Why are you taking helicopters instead of driving cars? Why are you? I mean, there's so many things that you could save. There's so many ways the royal family could actually really save energy. Perhaps selling some of their houses might help too. and fixing them up and putting in Energy Star appliances. That's a really good start. So I don't know where I am, and I have a time cue, please. Thank you. All right. I guess I don't know how much I have. I have 3 whole minutes left. Okay, this is why I miss having my call in, because normally my friend John would come here and ask me very brilliant questions. So if somebody could type in a brilliant question, I would really appreciate it. So the other thing that's really interesting to me is when people get started in promoting renewable energy, and this is like what happened in New York too. They have these great ideas, but they just don't think them through. And I love the fact that it's ironic to me that New York is, saying we're going to be, we make these artificial goals of we have to meet this by 2040 or the world's going to explode. And if we don't have all this renewable energy in place, we're going to be in trouble. But then we realize they don't have the infrastructure in place. They don't have the plans in place. Nobody strategically thought this through. It was just a bunch of regulators getting excited about some new cool technology that uses the sun or the wind. And they didn't really ever test it out. It's to me, and then they wonder why they can't do it because they didn't have a plan in place. And I just would love to have someone in this world who has a strategic view about, yes, if we want to go renewable, we can, but there's ways you have to do it, and it has to be phased in, and you can't just be only renewable. It has to be all above approach, which I talked about in my other show a few months ago. It was basically, you can't put all of your eggs in any one basket. It's called divestiture. It's bad. It's a good investment strategy. It's a better environmental and energy policy. And if you have renewables, you need to have backup too. That's the thing that they forget. Oh, the sun isn't going to shine all the time. The wind isn't going to blow all the time. And sometimes the wind blows at night when they don't have a peak load. So what do they do with that excess power that they generate? They think they're going to put it in batteries, but the battery technology hasn't been proven yet. So sometimes, in fact, California was generating so much excess electricity from their solar that they couldn't use, that it was just being wasted. And that's pretty bad too. So you have all these solar farms in California up and running, but the city can't use it all. And it's just getting wasted, which is also kind of a bad thing. So we need a holistic approach. And that's sort of what I always want to talk about on my show is you need to have a holistic approach. You need to be able to say, we need all of these things. We need to save energy. We want to save the planet. We don't want to have pollution. Nobody does. But we have to think about it in a logical way, not in an emotional way of, well, we're going to die if we don't if we don't immediately stop our ways. Well, that's not true. And people forget that the earth is very good at self-healing. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I'll be right. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on the KJ Show, and I'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hello and welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. KJ. I'm your host, Dr. Katherine Johnson, and today I'm talking about why we need to save Energy Star. Now, I used to be a journalist, and so I always like to provide objective opinion, objective facts. I don't know, there are probably objective opinions that we're getting now, but I like to provide the full story, the pros and cons. I talked a lot about the benefits of Energy Star, the fact that they have all these partnerships with utilities and state governments, and they leverage the infrastructure, and they've developed really successful collaborations with utility partners, both gas and electric utilities and water utilities too. And they do support making the home building world better. I mean, they do encourage builders to build energy efficient homes from the start, which is a huge change in the, tract building world. And they actually, one of my favorite programs is when they actually encourage mobile manufactured home manufacturers to put in Energy Star improvements and make those accommodations more energy efficient, which really does benefit the folks, this part of the society that can't buy a regular house and needs a manufactured home. And manufactured homes are notoriously energy inefficient. And this is a way to really improve that. And there was some really innovative programs where one utility organization was actually giving people new manufactured homes. And I was like, it didn't last long because it was pretty expensive program. But there are a lot of good things that Energy Star does. And they coordinate with the Department of Energy, usually. But the part that really I also want to point out, though, in all fairness, that there are some things that they don't do well. One of the things that they don't do well, and I get kind of annoyed at, is because they actually are promoting electrification. So they're not fuel neutral, which is wrong. Beneficial electrification is not beneficial. It ends up increasing costs for people. Electricity is 4 times more expensive than gas. So I don't understand this push for electrification. So the other thing that I don't like is, so they're really very politically, electrification is the way to go in the future, and they're not really being fair and objective, and they need to be. So this is where they have some political opposition, and this is where I disagree with some of the stuff Energy Star does. They also they are vulnerable to fraud and abuse, and we've had the GAO found some incidences of fraud and abuse where the manufacturers fudged the numbers or didn't report the numbers correctly, and they found that there were maybe 15 or 20 products out of the thousands of thousands. So you're going to expect some of that, and they're actually cracking down now, and they're saying that they're basically cracking down better on that. The EPA implemented stricter procedures for qualifications and also increased oversight, which is great. They have not always reported accurately some of the carbon or some of the savings emissions reductions. Another challenge. And I can say that because that's what I do for a living. And one paper in 2025, Resources for the Future, found no evidence that the certification actually causes building owners to invest in upgrades, suggesting the program may be identifying already efficient buildings. That would be what we would call in the business free ridership. And that may be true because the Energy Star program has been around for so long that most savvy building owners and developers, the ones I talk to, already know that energy efficiency is the way to go and Energy Star is the way to go. So I think at this point, it's a mature program. I don't think we can expect the Energy Star to be able to take credit for all the emissions that they reduce, but they did, in some ways, they actually did cause that, and they've transformed the market. So I don't necessarily agree with this paper that they can't document their savings. I think they can. It's just probably, they're not a regulated utility, so they probably don't care about free ridership. I certainly don't. The other thing is that there's some potential for greenwashing, which is true. The program has been accused where products might be labeled Energy Star, but they're not as energy efficient as they thought they were, and that they're slow to adapt technological advancements, which is true. But then again, when you're dealing with 80,000 different product categories, you're going to have, or product models, you're going to have things that need to take time. They were a little slow to get into the computer market, and then they ended up doing very well. They were, slow to get into some of the other equipment, and now they're really all in on almost everything in your home or business. They also have political intentions, which is where that whole beneficial electrification comes from. And, there are, problems with, when regulators start becoming activists and promoting one political agenda over another. That's a challenge too. And Energy Star falls prey to that as well. But overall, I have to say, I have evaluated, I said, hundreds of Energy Star programs offered by utilities across the country. The state government needs them to help them benchmark their buildings, especially as we get to have more and more stringent building codes. It's becoming more important and necessary that they have the right kind of energy efficient equipment to meet these new building code standards. There's all kinds of ways in which Energy Star affects our lives in things we don't even think about. But to me, it's really critically important that we finally have a government program that works. And why in the world would we get rid of it? I also think that, I always, when I go to conferences, my Energy Star colleagues are there and from the EPA, and now there's also Energy Star sort of also cross-pollinated with the Department of Energy in certain programs, primarily on the industrial side. So I see a lot of, progress in what they're doing. And I know the folks who run the programs, and I know how smart they are and how concerned they are. And frankly, they're good folks, and they should, they're doing good work. There are not a lot of government programs that I'm a big fan of. I love NASA. Because there's another program that actually leads to advances and wonderful things. And I think we've invested in science and technology. It benefits America in all kinds of ways. Energy Star is sort of that too. It's how can we make things better? And how can we look at the long term? So because the energy efficient equipment lasts longer, it keeps it out of landfills, it saves the environment in all kinds of different ways. I don't know if they've actually started rating solar PVs yet and renewable wind turbines. I don't think so. Maybe the motors inside, but I don't think so. But that would be interesting if they could actually do an Energy Star solar farm. I don't know, because the environmental consequences of solar are so high. But I really do think, that as someone who's been in the industry for 30 something years, why in the world would we get rid of a government program that actually works? There are so many other programs that don't. But this one actually they have said basically the $32 million budget is less than 1% of EPA spending, yet it saves American households $40 billion annually, and that's $350 for every federal dollar spent. That is the best return on investment I've heard in a long time. I bet you that even beats Warren Buffett. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, and you're watching The KJ Show with me, your host, Dr. Katherine Johnson, and I will be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk. Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
and welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. Katherine Johnson. I'm your host, and I wanted to talk a little bit about something near and dear to my heart, the municipalization, I've had it right, of city utilities. And it was interesting when I found this story about this little town in Minnesota that was struggling to, can they do it? Well, guess what? I live in a city, the city of Winter Park, Florida, which actually has done it. And I was involved in it in different ways for many years. And so this, by the way, the peacock is the symbol of Winter Park because there is a flock of peacocks that run wild in some of the estates around town, and there are a lot of estates. And so the peacocks kind of are there and ubiquitous, and sometimes they're kind of, so the peacock is the symbol of Winter Park, and I love it. So, but anyway, getting back to the utility. So what the municipal utility, and so in 2003, Winter Park has about 30,000 residents. And in 2003, the Winter Park, Florida decided that they wanted to do something very similar to what Slayton wants to do now. They wanted to prevent their Florida Power, which was getting bought by Duke, wanted to sell their assets, and Orlando Utilities Commission, which is a huge municipal utility, wanted to buy it. But the city of Winter Park residents said, no, we want to do it. We want to buy it. So they actually voted in favor of buying the assets from Florida Progress, Florida Power, now Duke, for $42 million. And the city residents said, yes, that's a good investment. We want to spend that money. So they did a bond. They issued a bond, and they actually had a vote, and they developed. It started in 2000, and then they took them 3 years to get everything together. They got everything together. They acquired existing electric infrastructure from Progress Energy Florida, and the community power was turned on in June 2005. It became profitable in 2007, and I have to tell you, it is very profitable. I used to be the chairman of the utility advisory board that manages this municipal utility, and it makes so much money that the Winter Park government kind of takes the profits away from the utility and puts it in the general fund, which we got annoyed at. We wanted to do more undergrounding. They basically pay less. We actually compare our rates every month. We pay less than what they would pay if they had stayed with Duke Energy. And they've also been improving reliability. As you know, in Florida, we have hurricanes, we have tornadoes, we have winds, and we have a lot of beautiful trees too. So instead of chopping all those trees down, they've actually underground the tree. They underground the lines. They've underground about most of the city. They're actually ahead of schedule. And by undergrounding the lines, bearing them up, they don't have the same level of outages. So they don't have to worry about squirrel outages quite as much. And frankly, the place that I own used to have outages all the time, and now that we've had our electricity service undergrounded, we don't have any outages. So even though we have storms and hurricanes passing through, we don't lose power, which is really the entire intent of an electric utility company. So what I found an old presentation done by the city manager who was sort of spearheading this campaign, Randy Knight. He said the reason it was successful, and this is Slayton, take notes, strong city commission, good attorneys and consultants. I wasn't one of those. Help with FEMA, the different Florida Municipal Electric Association, the American Public Power Association, and other cities. They had an educated and involved community, and and Florida Progress Energy tried to basically scare everybody and say it's very dangerous. What turned out to be very dangerous was one of my first meetings when I was appointed to the city advisory board was I found out that there was a transformer that was 30 years old, located a block away from an elementary school. Well, transformers have a habit of blowing up, especially when they're past their operational life cycle, which this one definitely was. And so one of the first things they found out was how aging and how badly Progress Energy had treated the infrastructure, kind of like what Xcel Energy does in Slayton. So we were all concerned that this transformer could blow up and explode and harm school children. So the very first thing we did as the utility advisory board is say, absolutely, please replace that transformer. Yes, it's an expensive investment, but it's an investment in our safety and in our community. So not only did they manage to do that, but they also upgraded a lot of different parts. So by becoming a municipal utility, they actually now have better service, lower rates, better equipment. And frankly, it's a really good thing for the city. So I'm very proud of Winter Park for doing that. And the other reason I wanted to make sure we save Energy Star is because I wrote a book. You can put it up. Handbook for Energy Savings, 7 easy ways to save, the next slide, 7 easy ways to save energy and the planet. You can get it at Amazon, but you can also get it on my website, johnsonconsults.com, and there's a link there. And the thing I really like about this is there's a lot of good information about all the different calculators Energy Star has developed over the years, so you can actually calculate how much you can save by recycling your second refrigerator or your freezer, and how much you can save by installing energy efficient lights in the most commonly used outlets. So it is a resource that I've been using for my entire career, and I hope you will too. It really does help you. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'll be back in 2 weeks, and have a great day. Bye bye.
This has been The KJ Show. Tune in next week as Katherine shares her insights to current changes in the energy industry while drawing on her experience as an energy efficiency consultant for the past 30 years, right here on The KJ Show.